All right, everybody, welcome to Live from My Drum Room. My guest today is Grammy Award winning drummer, singer, songwriter, and multi instrumentalist, the great Tommy Taylor. I've been a huge fan of Tommy's since I first heard his exquisite drumming on Christopher Cross's debut record in 1980. And today we'll talk about that, as well as his work with guitar legend Eric Johnson and more. And it's an honor to have Tommy here with me today on Live from My Drum Room. So please welcome the legendary Tommy Taylor. Tommy,
Hey, hey, how you doing?
I'm doing great. Thank you for being here.
Oh, it's my honor, man. I'm really glad to be here and finally get this thing going, man. Great.
Yeah, thank you. And I want to say congratulations on just an incredible career. I've, as I said in the intro, I've been a fan of yours for 45, 46 years. And since the first time I heard you on Christopher Cross's debut record. So, man, thank
Oh,
you.
well, thank you, man. That's awesome. It's just great to have been able to do anything that anybody still cares about,
Well, yeah. And, I mean, talking about that music, you and I had a great conversation recently, and not surprisingly, the music is so timeless. It's incredible that almost 50 years later, we're talking about it. It's as popular as it was then. Thanks to like yacht rock radio and that whole sort of
Sure.
genre. And kind of, I think I know the answer to this question, but did you guys have any even idea that the music would be so timeless that you
You know, we were really trying to do something unique. We had aspirations to be in a certain tier, and it was a band situation. Christopher Cross was a band, and we were working as a band. I mean, Chris wrote and sang all the songs, but we had a bar that we really aspired to. But we were aware of the fact of how difficult it is to really get anywhere. I mean, you think it's hard to get anywhere today. I mean, at least you can just put your record out. But in those days, you had to go through all kinds of force fields and things to get uh, into a situation where you could release your music. And, we were just hoping that maybe we'd sell enough records where they'd let us do another one. We didn't think we were going to blow up quite that big. We thought we were great, but everybody thinks they're great or they wouldn't be doing it. So we were just in there
yeah
trying to make a record, that we hoped would sell enough copies that Warner would give us a chance to do a second record.
yeah isn't that I know I've read some interviews with you where you've kind of said that and that makes perfect sense. It's a very humble approach. You were looking at it like, like this is going to be the first record, and then we're going to keep doing this, and we're going to keep writing songs and talking about that first record. So you guys were a working band, um, playing gigs and playing all that music every night.
Actually, the guys when I joined the band were a house band at a nightclub in an apartment complex in South Houston. They played 6 nights a week there, and it was covers. Basically just doing the stuff of the day. Bob Seger and Eagles and disco stuff, and you know, I knew the drummer that played with them. He was a good friend of mine, actually. I didn't know he was playing with them. I'd kind of lost touch with him, and I was asked to join the group. Basically to do an audition to join the group by cutting a new set of original demos for them. And but they were going to make a move to Austin from Houston because the cover scene up here was a little bit stronger, and they wouldn't be just dead end sitting in the same room night after night. We played, so we became a kind of a casuals phenomenon. We played a lot of fraternities and sorority parties. Austin has a real big. That's kind of was the basis for the Austin music scene in those days. You would play the clubs during the week, and then you'd get the big paying party gigs on the weekend, and then that branched out.
Yeah.
Our manager slash booking agent was pretty prominent with some of the people that he partnered with. So we played all over the Southwest. We were one of the highest paid cover bands in the Southwest and one of the most in demand. And we had a pretty incredible repertoire because Chris could sing anything. I mean, we could do anything. I would sing a fourth of the material. actually a third of the material. Andy and Rob, the keyboard and bass player, would sing a third of the material, and then Chris would sing a third of the material. But we could cover anything from Barbra Streisand to the Beatles to Bob Seger to Foreigner to whatever, you know. So, and we did really good renditions, very accurate renditions. We were a stickler for that. So we didn't really play the original music except at showcase dates, you know,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
those would be completely separate and they'd be announced as such. And even though we wouldn't be able to fill a full night in those days in Austin, you would play a full 9 to 2 set. You know, you wouldn't, it wasn't multiple bands on one evening, it was one band. And so we'd have to augment those gigs with cover material, but we wouldn't do the same kind of covers we would do, say, at a fraternity party necessarily.
Right.
Except for one thing, the guys were big Beach Boys fans, and we had a pretty strong Beach Boy medley that we do, and so we would include that sometimes. It was one of Billy Gibbons' favorite things. He loved our Beach Boys melodies medley, so he would drive up from Houston just to see us do that. But yeah, that's kind of how it was. We weren't really playing Chris's music too much. We do like maybe one showcase gig every couple of months or something for a while.
Yeah. Yeah. And what made you, I mean, I think I know the answer, but at a point you guys all sort of realized that you had to go to, if you were going to do this, you had to go to the next level and write your own material. And
Well,
did that?
Actually, I mean, I was 19 when Tim Neese, our manager, contacted me. I was real friendly with one of his other groups, a band from Fort Worth called Texas, did a lot of original material, and they'd been in major label bands already. They were looking for a new deal. And their drummer, Gary Ozer, was really, really important to me and a mentor figure. And he kind of really got me into the Sonar drums and smaller drums tuned really deep and mic'd from the bottom and all that kind of thing. But so I had mentioned to Tim, I realized that Texas was kind of Gary's group. He was kind of the business head of that. And, I mean, I didn't want to replace Gary by any means, but I was looking for something, that was going to go to the next level, because the guys I was playing with were great musicians, but they were kind of dead end copy, and they were looking at college and getting a day gig and all that kind of thing. They weren't quite in the same serious. I didn't have any other options. So I got a call from Tim one day to come in and get just for a meeting. I didn't really understand what he was getting at. And he had asked me about another group that he managed if I wanted to, be involved with them. And it was kind of a lateral move. I'd have to move to another town. I was living at home for free with my parents. I'd have to get a job. I'd have to get an apartment. It's just like, why would I want to do that? I'm not going to be, it's no gain. They're great
Yeah.
guys and
Yeah.
great group, and I like them. But so I was about to leave, and he said, "Hey, I want you to hear something." And I was like, "Okay," I'll sat back down, and he put, the Christopher Cross demo tape in, and he played me a song. I was like, "Wow, I thought it was a record." I
Wow.
just said, "Well,
Yeah.
that's incredible, man. Where can I get that?" So that's a band I manage in Houston called Christopher Cross. I was like, "You manage them?" Wow. I mean, I'd known Tim for a number of years. I mean, he was a drummer too, and I was like, wow, if you manage them, you're a whole lot cooler than I thought you were. Even
And
though he was doing great with Texas and stuff, but yeah.
yeah. Yeah. Do you remember what song that was, Tommy? That
It,
first demo that you heard?
it was a song that's never been released. It was a song called "Just My Luck," and
Okay.
it was a situation where it's like, you know, the band, Chris had been he was in an original band, that did all original material in the late '60s called Flash. They opened for Led Zeppelin, so
Yeah.
it's
Yeah.
kind of like original music was not new. I mean, they knew that's what they were striving for. Chris was the guy. I mean, he wrote the songs. He had the voice. He wrote the songs. So Andy and Rob had been with Chris off and on since '69. So, it was a kind of an established thing. They'd been shopping tapes for years and being rejected. I mean, they had files of formal rejections from all the labels. So it wasn't a thing was like, okay, all of a sudden we need to do this. It's like they were already doing it when I got in. My
Yeah.
first foray into that was to record 4 songs, new original demos with them for a chance to audition to be in the band, and 3 of those ended up being on the record.
Yeah. And what were those? What were those songs? What were the three that?
The first song I ever played with them was "Ride Like the Wind," and then we cut "Sailing," and we cut another song called "The Light Is On" that's on the record. Those on the first set of demos that I
Mm,
did with them.
yeah. And when you like of course, Ride Like the Wind and Sailing are just mega hits. Were the drum parts because you were coming in and were they already sort of created by someone before you, or did you?
On "Ride Like the Wind," not really. I mean, Rob, our keyboard player, was a drummer, a good drummer. He had been a drummer before he was a keyboard player, and I walked in and there was a brand new tune for them. I think they might have played it. They would do things like they get bored at the cover gig, so they would just like be doing whatever, a Paul McCartney song, and the song would end and the drums would keep going, and Chris might start the riff, and they might do that song, and it would just kind of be segued in and out of something else.
Mhm.
But I don't know how much they played "Ride Like the Wind." They got there, and Chris kind of played the riff a little bit, and Rob kind of said, "Look, this is kind of the feel we're looking for." Kind of not disco, not four on the floor. We were totally not about that, but the triplet feel on the hi hat was there, and he just said, kind
Yeah.
of do that. And Chris started playing the riff, and I just stopped and said, "Look, let's just start this because I know exactly what to do." And so all those parts on that song are mine, except for the triplet hi hat feel. I
Wow.
mean that
Yeah.
was something that was the meter, the tempo, and the hi hat feel were given. The rest of it's all mine. Yeah.
Yeah. Beautiful part, Tommy. I mean,
Thank you.
just yeah,
Well,
absolutely.
we fought. Michael's Mardians alluded to that. That was our kind of our first comeuppance. It's like we were pretty cocky. We were a band. We were a family. You're not going to mess with us, dude. And but Michael was like this ace guy. We loved him. We loved his work with Steely Dan, and it's like it's
Yeah.
like, okay, well, we got to kind of defer because he's kind of big time, and he can have anybody in the world in there, but he's got us, so we kind of learned to work with each other. But he was like, "Man, I'm not digging this bass drum thing," and I'm going like, "Dude, man, that's my thing. What are you telling me?" And he's like, so he's going, "I think it needs four on the floor." I'm going, you know, big red flags. Rob is like he's rebelling. I'm rebelling. No, man, we're not a disco band. We just survived disco. You want us to play four on the floor? Are you crazy? And so, I mean, there's even, legal pad. Rob always had a legal pad. It's like drew a big thing that says "submit" with an arrow, and I'm sitting underneath it. I've got that photo somewhere. You know.
Oh
So
man.
but Michael was right. I mean, and the thing is, I mean, it went through lots of different permutations and combinations. I mean, Michael wanted me to play the whole thing, without with just straight through everything, not breaking up the "Got Such a Long Way to Go" parts, just playing
Oh,
straight through that with four on the floor. And I was going like, man, we can let's compromise here. Let's try to
yeah.
get something that works for both of our ideas, because we can't just turn this into just that kind of a thing. And I think, finally what we ended up with, he was right and we were right. And well, the
Yep.
proof's in the pudding, it
Well,
works.
yeah, I mean, great instinct, Tommy, because I mean, we can all say this in hindsight, of course, but
Sure.
that middle, that triplety thing you play in the bass drum during the "Long Way to Go" part is like, that is so integral to just like the whole
But,
vibe.
it's funny. Like I mentioned to there was a local group here, fantastic, played all originals, called Genesee, and the drummer Chuck Rogers is a great friend of mine still to this day. I restored his mid '60s Ludwig kit after he hadn't been playing for 40 years, and he found it in a basement somewhere, and it had some water damage and stuff. So, but Chuck had this thing. They had a song that was written by John Inman, who played with Jerry Jeff Walker and the Los Gonzo Band, and a lot of people like that, called "Whiskey Still." And it had a line, "Got such a long way to go," or "Got a long way to go." It's like,
Yeah.
"Got a long way to go," but da da. And I went, "Oh, got such a long way to go," da da da. And I put that in there. I mean, that was one of the
All
first
right.
things I added to the song. So I lifted that straight from Chuck, and I've told him that, and I've told everybody that, because I'm not one of those kind of people that doesn't give credit where credit's due. I mean, I have my influences, and I want them to know they were my influences.
Oh, that's so cool. Is that a
Yeah.
song I could find that somewhere?
You can.
I Okay.
Actually, it was recorded by Rusty Weir, And it was on his first debut LP on 20th Century Fox. It's actually on YouTube. You can find it. It's
Okay,
called
I'll
Whiskey
find it.
Still. Yeah,
Okay,
yeah.
yeah. Thank you.
The
Thanks for
drummer
that.
that played on that was, I think it's either, man, it could be Gary Malabar even on that record. I'm not sure. You'd have to look at the credits.
Okay,
But he did Chuck's thing. It's actually in the bass line too. So, and Andy followed me too. With that, it's pretty cool. So a lot of history.
great. Yeah, I always love that. One of my regular viewers, listeners, Heidi Vertaler, had a question, and I think she's going to have to go in a little while. So I wanted to
Yeah,
maybe just ask you this question.
sure.
She said, "Did Tommy play on one of my favorite songs, Sailing?" Googled it. Yes, he did. But she was wondering. Her question is, who came up with the beautiful chimes and like wood blocks, all the percussive stuff, and that, or
That's
was it
Victor
you,
Feldman. That's
Victor
Victor Feldman.
Feldman? Okay,
Yeah,
yes,
yeah.
yeah,
I'm pretty sure. I don't think Lenny Castro's on that. I think that's all Victor. I'm not sure. I'd have
okay,
to look at the credits, but I know the wind chime is Victor. That was just, I mean, and all that's, you got to realize, I mean, we cut the basic track and Andy and I flew home. There wasn't enough money for us to live in LA for the whole summer. Rob stayed because he's kind of an arrangement guy and everything. But Andy and I cut the basics in 2 weeks for that record and went home. So, you know, we heard it all in September and we had no idea what they had done. We hadn't heard the string arrangements or any of that kind of stuff. It was like, wow. I
wow,
mean, we thought it would be cool, but we had no idea what they're going to put on it. Marty is just such a whiz with that stuff. He knows, I mean, he has like a little checklist and he just goes down it and just adds what he hears. And it's brilliant. I produce now too. And I've told Michael a million times, I said, man, I learned everything I know about producing records in 2 weeks through osmosis,
yeah,
just by
yeah.
being in the room with you.
That and just to back up a second too, because I know we sort of jumped in really quickly, and you obviously, before you joined the band with Christopher Cross, and they were like an established band. You were already pretty established in Austin anyway. You started playing young and gigging,
Oh
and
yeah.
yeah, you
Yeah.
were on
Yeah.
the scene.
I was, I mean, I made it my business in those days to know everybody that came to town and everybody who was in town, as far as the musicians. I mean, I started playing in the clubs when I was 11, really got established in the local club scene and fraternity scene when I was 13, and played all the way through junior high school and high school. I mean, high school, I was sometimes playing 7 nights a week, 5 hours a night till 2 a.m. So,
Yeah.
yeah, and I graduated from high school. I kind of applied to UT and I went there for orientation, couldn't find a parking place and never went back. It's like if I can't park for orientation, this is not going to work for me. It's much to my father's chagrin. Yeah, so I,
Yeah, yeah.
he basically said, "Look, we'll pay for your college. You got a year to figure it out." I mean, if you haven't started in a year, we're going to keep the money. So uh, so
Well,
that was kind of it. I didn't ever have anything else. I never wanted to do anything else. I just wanted to make records. I was a big, since I was, before I could even think about playing, I loved 45 RPM records. That's all I wanted to do. I just loved it. I
mhm.
wanted to be a DJ before I started playing. It's just like, I love records. I want to make those. So, that's just kind of how it panned out. But yeah, no, I'd been playing for a long time. I already been playing. I was 19 when I did that first demo session, about to be 20, and I've been playing professionally almost half my life already. So
Yeah, yeah, no kidding. And that explains a lot as to why when a couple of years later you guys went in to make that record, you were playing with such maturity, even at 22 or 21 or
yeah,
22.
well, thank you. I mean, I look back on it, it's like I have no idea how any of that happened. I mean, I feel like I was so green, but I had I had my influences. I had good time. Um, Gary Ozier, like I had mentioned, this guy was like the most amazing drummer. He wasn't a chops monster, although he could play a lot of
Mhm.
stuff. But he, man, I mean, he was the simplest player ever. I mean, he could play, like, they played a lot. They played 300 dates a year in clubs, and they played a lot of really cool covers, and they played a lot of originals. But they might go for 30, 40 minutes in a set, and the drums would never stop. They
Mm,
just segued
mhm.
song after song after song. And Gary might go for 2 or 3 songs and never play a fill. I
Yeah.
mean, he's not going to do anything unnecessary. And it's like if it warranted a fill or a crash, he would do that. But if it didn't,
Yeah.
I mean, kind of like you listen to Al Jackson on the Al Green records. I mean, it's
Yeah.
just
Yeah.
and that's all it is. And so I just listened to Gary and was going like, when I first saw him play, I thought this guy is just really like, man, I mean, when's he going to do something?
Yeah.
And then, my buddy Mark Evans, who we taught each other how to play, basically when we were kids, we were listening to him go like, yeah, but look at the crowd. I
Hmm.
mean, you can't get any more people on the dance floor. Everybody loves this band. Why
Yeah.
is that?
Yeah.
Well, that's because the drums have this thing. And Gary had that thing, man. It's like, okay, I want to be like that guy. You know,
Well, you got that thing too, Tommy. You got like
thank you.
I think really the first thing that grabbed me about your playing. I was 19 years old when I first heard you with Christopher Cross, and and at that age, a lot of us are, we're kind of razzle dazzled by a lot of
Oh
chops and
yeah.
a lot of. But I, honestly, and I've told you this. When I first connected with you years ago, I didn't realize it was you until later on that was you on that song. And I just remember that the I won't even say simplicity. It's the feel. It's your feel that just it grabbed me. It was just and the way the music just I don't know, man. It's what's so important about being a drummer is you illustrate it in those
Well,
songs.
thank you. It's like, I mean, Ringo kind of, is the archetype for that. I mean, he basically said, if the singer stops, I'll play a fill. If he's going to
Hmm.
come back in, I'll crash a cymbal. I mean, it's like it's really for me. I never. I mean, sure. I mean, I grew up and I remember the first day I was turned on to Cream and the Jimi Hendrix Experience on the same day at a guitar lesson. And it's like
Man.
my I went to my guitar lesson and my teacher said, we're not going to do guitar today. I want you to listen to these two records. He just got them from California because in Texas in those days it took months for us to hear about anything. And he said he played a little bit of Are You Experienced. I was just going, well, I don't even understand what's happening. I mean, I have to revisit that later in the afternoon. My head just blew up.
Yeah.
Like what is that? I look at the picture on the back. I'm looking at these guys going like, wow, far out.
Yeah.
So then
Yeah.
he said, I want you to listen to this drummer, and he played Toad for me off Fresh Cream, and it was like, okay, okay. Because I was an aspiring drummer at the time. I was playing both guitar and drums, and I just went, okay, yeah, now this is the real deal. Because before that, nobody had ever played anything on drums that was important in rock music. And Ginger Baker would hate us for saying it was rock, but I mean,
Yeah.
it's like I mean, I get it. I mean, it's like I mean, I stated that on a thing the other day. It's like you know, six Marshall stacks, psychedelic clothes. Everybody's got an afro, and Ginger Baker's got a drum set with more drums than anybody's ever seen and more cymbals than anybody's ever seen. It's not exactly saying jazz to me, you know.
Hmm.
It's
Yeah.
rock, and and
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
and you know. And Cream played rock songs, and their studio records are definitely rock. They were appealing to a rock crowd. But I mean, it for me. I mean, he's the first person that made drums important other than being in the band. So I aspired to that. I had an altar to Ginger Baker when I was a kid. I loved the guy. I loved his playing and Mitch Mitchell too. Those are probably two of the biggest influences on me early on. Um,
Sure. Yeah.
but it's like um, I got over that. It's like okay, well, but who's on the radio making these commercials? I mean, rarely would you hear a Hendrix song or a Cream song on an AM radio that was going to sell millions and millions of copies. And I just got into songs. That was kind of what I was doing. So that's kind of how I tailored my playing. What's going to serve the song? And I guess I'm just lucky. I always listen to songs, and my playing just evolved that way to where I understood subliminally what was right to play.
Yeah. Yeah. Well said. And a little later on, we're going to get into a little something else that you played on that certainly demonstrates that you got a lot more going on than
Thank
just.
you.
Yeah. I mean, that's the great thing about you is like you play these beautiful just sublime, beautiful parts, and then you play with Eric Johnson and it's just like, holy shit, lights out, you know, rock and roll, or blues
Yeah,
rock or yeah.
yeah. I was just trying to do what he wanted,
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Well, there's a question from Doug McKenzie, and he said, "I read where the entire album that we're talking about, Christopher Cross's record,
Yep, yep.
was recorded with a Ludwig Superphonic purchased on consignment for $75. Is
True
that
story.
true?
That's a
True
true
story.
story. Yeah. Yeah.
And of course, how did you get it to sound so fat, and do you still have it today?"
Of course, I still have that drum today. Steve Gadd all but begged me to own that snare drum, and
I'll
I
bet.
mean, and I because he used my drums on the second record. When I was let go from the sessions, he played my kit for various reasons, which we don't need to go on into here. But that drum, I had ordered the Sonar kit, but I didn't order a Sonar snare. The kit was specially configured for the record. The record was actually postponed because the drums were stuck on a dock strike in Boston Harbor.
Wow.
But I didn't have a snare. I had been using our Rob's, our keyboard player snare drum, and you know, he had a Sound King 6.5 by 14 brass Slingerland, which was a good sounding drum, but I wanted mine. I have an identity thing. It's like I need my sound. I want my thing.
Sure.
And so I was working at Straight Music in Austin, and I went into work one morning, and there was that drum. It's a '66 aluminum shell 402, uh, and it was pitted, and it was kind of funky. And I looked at it and went, "That's it," So I talked to my boss. I said, "Hey, can I write a demo ticket on this? I want to try," because I'd gotten the drums. We're going to do some pre-production. We hadn't tried the drums, so Chet was going to run some mics up on them to see how they sounded. They said, "Yeah." I said, "Well, I'll put a new head on it so I don't damage, the head that's on it, and we'll see." And I took it to the studio, and I tuned it really deep. And we were using a bar towel taped in those days,
Yeah.
just on the
Yep.
corner to deaden it. And Chet ran the faders up, and I hit it 3 times. Said, "Put it in the case. We're taking it to LA. Don't do a thing to it. Don't touch it. That's it."
Yeah, man.
And so I went back the next day, and I said, "Yeah, I'm going to take that drum." And I said, "Whose is it?" He said, "It's Tony Diegues's." I said, "Wow, okay, cool." Because Tony and I were friends. He's a drummer friend of mine. He owns a chain of Mexican restaurants here. He's a great drummer, great guy. And so I was the one that got to call Tony up and tell him to come get his money for the drum. I said, "Hey man, I bought your snare drum." He said, "It's the worst snare drum I ever owned, man. Horrible drum." Well, okay. It's like, yeah, well, yes, one man's trash is another man's treasure. I made a lot of
Right on.
records with a lot of hit records with that record, with that drum.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. No, it's so funny because, and no offense to Tony, but in the right hands, I mean, it's like a no-brainer. Any Ludwig snare is going to just be magic,
Well, that drum, it had seen better days. His father was a drummer. It might have even come from his dad. But they have a real inherent problem with the tension rods backing out,
Mhm.
and especially lower pitch tuning, where you don't have a lot of tension on the hoop. They tend to back out. And I think that was probably what was bothering him. Just kind of it would always drop tuning. But I was tuning really low, and I don't know. We didn't have lug locks in those days. I don't know. I guess I just dealt with it. But I love the
Yeah.
drum. I mean, I'd never sell it. There's no way. I mean, when I die, they'll either bury me with it or I'll leave it to some other drummer who loves it.
That's great. What a great story. And just to back up another second and
Yeah.
like talking about when you mentioned like the strings on Sailing, for example, was that a song you guys were playing live before you were like had you been out gigging it to sort of get it?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, when we did the showcase gig, we would play that song, and I'll be real honest with you, man. And anybody would back me on this. It's not uncommon. Nope, it was just another one of Chris's songs.
Yeah.
It was a ballad. I wasn't a ballad. Those guys were more into ballads. They were older than me. I mean, Andy's 10 years older than I am. Chris is 6 years older than I am. Rob is 8 or 9 years older than I was. I mean, I was a kid. Those guys were already
Yeah.
seasoned, and I was into rock, man. I mean, I was into Bad Company and Free and Savoy Brown and English progressive rock stuff like that. And but we had some common ground. Procol Harum was one of Rob's favorite groups, and I loved Procol Harum, and that's kind of one. We had little places where we connected, which is how I kind of got in the group. Because it's like I knew things that they were into, and I was into them too, even though I was much younger. And so sailing, it was a yawner, man. Nobody really I mean, we would play it, but it wouldn't get smatterings of it. It wasn't like people would come up, oh my God, sailing, that's just the greatest thing we've ever heard. We got to hear it again. It was like Ride Like the Wind was the one. We would end the
Yeah.
night with Ride Like the Wind, and it would be like, Madison Square Garden, Christy and I used to joke, say, ooh, that Ride Like the Wind, and and it's like we would joke about it because we knew it was a hit. I told Chris I had heard their demo, and he walked in and they played that, and we played through it one time. I said, that's the most incredible thing I've ever heard in my life. That is going to be a number one record. I told him that the first day I met those guys. And but Sailing, nah, would have never bet. We thought Warner Bros. Was trying to kill us. We had made such headway with Ride Like the Wind. And Mo Austin comes and says, we're going to release Sailing as the second single. Like, you're trying to kill our career, bro. Why would you do that? It's like, I mean, Chris really at that point, we have Ride Like the Wind. So Chris is kind of cocky and feeling his oats. He's going like, no, man, you can't do that. He says, well, I run the label and I'm going to call the shots. You can say whatever you want, but I'm releasing Sailing. It's like, oh my God, we're dead. We wanted I Really Don't Know Anymore to be the next single because it was obviously, but there were some conflicts with, I mean, Michael McDonald was everywhere in those days, and we couldn't lead with a brand new act with two singles with him on it doing background vocals. So we always called I Really Don't Know Anymore the greatest number one single that was never a number one single because it's still one of the strongest tunes on the record. But Sailing,
Yeah,
nah,
absolutely.
we would have bet everything against that.
Wow. Well, the song really speaks to me, and I think it speaks to a lot of people. But I totally understand what you're saying, though. I mean, Ride Like the Wind is just it kind of has it all. It's
Well, I think, the thing is that Sailing worked. It was just absolutely perfect at the time. And the promotion of it was brilliant. I mean, Russ Thyret at Warner was just an amazing promotion guy. I love the guy. I don't know if he's still out there or not, but he was just absolutely incredible. So, I mean, you know, promotion campaigns are interesting. So they decided to release Sailing. So Warner Brothers bought 20 Hobie catamaran sailboats and put the Flamingo Christopher Cross logo on the sails and gave them away at radio.
wow. Man.
So they're out
Those,
there somewhere, I guess. So I mean,
yeah,
they did a lot of things like that, and you know, like I said, Sailing was never a song I was really that fond of, but I think that there's a cosmic thing that happens. I've even noticed it with my songs. The more people listen to them and the more people like them, it changes the actual song. It makes it something more than it was. And Sailing has just had so much attention put on it and so much enjoyment that it sounds different to me than it did then.
yeah,
And
yeah,
I really believe that to be true in the hyper uh, cosmic world. I just think that things change. And I mean, what can I say? I mean, I'll tell a quick story. I was in a studio situation in LA doing a record in the late '90s, and it was a kind of a dodgy situation from a business standpoint uh, that kind of reared its head ugly in an ugly way at the last minute, and the sessions were kind of complicated because of that. And there was a point where we just kind of had to shut down and take a break. Everybody had to take a breather because there was too much pressure from the business side weighing on the performance. So like at the end of the day, I'm going to make a great record no matter what the business is. But the assistant engineer is this guy, Roby Banerjee. He was working at Ocean Way there. And, we were a blues band from Texas, and
mhm.
not, I mean, nothing really significant, just another session for him. And I mentioned something about the way the drums were getting mic'd up and everything. I mentioned, something about the way we had done the Christopher Cross record. And he stopped and did a double take and went, you mean like Sailing, Christopher Cross? I said, yeah, I played on that record. He went, oh wow. I instantly had a different kind of credibility level. And it's like, this, I don't go around with a flag,
Yeah, yeah.
But he said, well, wow, man, that's like my favorite record. I said, well, it's been a good one. I'm glad you liked that, So we're having a meltdown in the studio, and I'm needing some time by myself. And he says, hey, can I bother you for a minute? I went, "Oh, okay. That's a little bit difficult. But sure. Yeah. What's on your mind? He said, Lee DiCarlo? I went, a name sounds familiar. He said, he was the engineer on John Lennon's Double Fantasy record. Okay. Yeah, right. I've read the name. Sure. He said, well, I was working with him the other day. I said, oh, well, that's awesome. And he said, we were working on this track, and I told him, I said, it reminds me of Sailing by Christopher Cross. And Robbie said, Lee just pulled the faders down, rolled the chair back, and leaned back in the office chair, put his hands behind him, and said, man, that's just an incredible record. And Robbie said, well, man, it's like my favorite record. And he turned to him and said, it was John Lennon's favorite record too.
No shit. Wow.
So, it's like, here I'm having a complete, lose your mind moment in the studio where we're decaying, and I'm going like, is this even going to work? And then I get this news that, something I had worked on was, I mean, we're probably all in this because of John Lennon. I mean, that's why we all were making the record in the first place, is because of what the Beatles did. That's why we wanted to do it, and to have that come full circle. I mean, the record was pretty major, and you find these things out, 20 years later, and it's just mind blowing to me. So, it's an incredible experience. It's got a lot of negative connotations, but we'll take the good ones today.
Yeah, no, I get it, Tommy. I do, and I know it's probably harder for you. Well, not harder for you, but you're so close to it in a way. It's like it was just part of the work that you did at the time, and whereas it just other people like John Lennon and like myself and like 100 million others, it affected people differently, and it's so great for you. I guess what I'm getting at is it's so great to have you hear that from people, that how much that affected them.
I mean, I get choked up just thinking about it. I mean, that John was at a place in his life, he was actually learning to sail. And, that was right before the Double Fantasy record came out, and that whole summer, and to have that be, on his listening radar and have him think that much of it was like, wow. I mean, I never dreamed to meet him or anything. I knew people that knew him, but I mean, to have him listen to something, I mean, he didn't know Christopher Cross was a band, he just knew, Christopher Cross was a person that had made this record. But, I mean, for us to be heard by, that and appreciated that's otherworldly for me. I don't even know what to say. I'm just kind of still like in shock,
That's great. Well, let's dig into a couple of tunes. How about that? Let's play. Let's jump ahead to Ride Like the Wind.
Okay.
Since that's on our minds, and such a great tune. But I do want to play Sailing as well, because there's a couple of things I really want to just sort of talk about and highlight about that song that just really
absolutely, man. Ask anything you want. I'd be glad to enlighten anybody on any aspect of it. I have pretty good memory of everything that went down. So.
I know you do. Yeah. All right. Well, let's listen to Ride Like the Wind, and
cool.
And great tune. Here we go. I know every drummer that has ever heard that song has played those bass drum triplets on their steering wheel when that comes on the radio. I know I would wait. I'd hear it start up. I'm like, oh man, here it is, and yeah, beautiful, just
Thank
beautiful
you.
playing, Tommy. Yeah,
It's funny. I was listening back to that. Let me pull this earbud because I can hear better. Yeah, that it's great. A little thing, just explanation there. That last in the double chorus. We go to the halftime there.
yeah,
Uh, and that was a complete accident. We had a mistake, and I used to just when anything would fall apart at a rehearsal or in the studio, I would just go into halftime for just or go into a shuffle, right? Just to kind of just lighten things up a bit. And I did that. And Omar said, "Hey, yeah, that halftime thing, I dig that. Just do that, and then we'll come right back in and finish that." So that was like just on in the moment right there, and so I
wow,
started doing that. And
wow,
it's so dynamic now, in retrospect, it's like, wow, that makes the end, because
it
it gives you that,
absolutely.
wait, stop, pause, let's get a handle on what's really going on here. And then we're going to ride like the wind. We're getting out of here.
Yeah,
It's
yeah, and it
awesome.
really, I mean, it really is. It's like a metaphor, I guess, or just it really feels like you're riding like the wind, and that the way you drive the tune, man. It's like, yeah, it's great, and
Thank
and
you.
that and yeah, and that's a great little that's a great little side story to know that too. That wasn't something that when you
We
played
had
that
never
song
rehearsed it
live.
that way.
Yeah,
Yeah.
wow.
But this was
Um,
interesting. I had to learn a lot of things in this because like those, like the going back into the verses, I had never, it was hard for me, and I fought it because Michael wanted me to come back in with the four on the floor, which would cause me to hit a crash cymbal without backing it with a bass drum. Bump
right.
bump psoo, bump bump psoo, right? And
Yeah.
it was like spastic to me. I almost could not do it. And so, in retrospect, now of course, now I would play it that way, note for note, no matter what. But some things like that were challenges. And this is the first thing I'd ever played to a metronome. Um, Michael really wanted that steady like that. And not, I mean, the demo is out there, Chris has released that. Chris's people have released that. So you can hear the demo on YouTube of what I played originally. It's not very different. And I cut that
Mm.
straight up, no click track, never had seen the guys the day before, never played the song the day before. So the bass drum pattern's different, obviously, because the four on the floor. But so a lot of this stuff was new to me. I mean, I'm a young guy. All of a sudden, I'm in LA. This is big time. Carlos Vega was in the day before. I mean, Jeff Porcaro's around the corner. Andy Newmark's in the next room cutting with Randy Newman. I'm like, I'm just some kid from Texas in a bar band, and I'm already
Yeah.
kind of, everybody's already looking at me weird because my drum set's so strange. And so, now you need to play with a metronome. It's like, oh man, I was like Gringo says, I am the click track, because it just wasn't done. And so, but Omardian had one of the first Lynn drums ever made, I mean, because they were brand new, nobody used them.
Yeah,
So
yeah,
he
yeah.
sets the Lynn up with just a pattern. He says, it's just like playing with another drummer, man. Don't worry about it. So it's like, okay, yeah, I can do that. So that's the first track I'd ever played with a metronome. But we didn't cut the whole record to a metronome. Just that and Sailing are the only two pieces I think that are on the record that were actually cut to the click.
Okay.
Yeah.
And that was a question I had, is what, were was Sailing or that song cut to a click, and that explains it.
Sailing
Yeah.
was and Ride Like the Wind, yeah. But it's funny because you can listen to the demo of Sailing too, and it was cut to a click. It's just straight up,
Yeah.
and it's as steady as the record is. I don't know.
Yeah. Well, I commend you because, having never worked with a click track before, you're in there, you're a kid, and you cut this, talking about both tracks really, but talking about Sailing, where it feels so organic. I mean, there's all those spaces where it breathes. It's the dynamics that you're playing. It's like, it gets really soft and then you build up.
Yeah,
So,
the thing is with that song, it's like it was. I never like well, going back. I never was that super fond of it, but there was something mystical going on there. We knew the song was important. I mean, because it was really being. I mean, you know, we tried it several times. We didn't get it. They had a kind of a coup, actually. Omardian had talked to Chris, and they decided to have Jeff Porcaro come in and play the song, which was like Andy and Rob. Andy reminded me of it, so Andy and Rob kind of was like, oh, I don't know about that. That's not our band. So we were
Yeah.
still had a lot of solidarity at that point. And they were like, because Rob had already been sort of slightly demoted because he was our piano player, but you got Michael O'Martin, it's like even
Yeah.
Rob's like, okay, fine, great. But Rob was playing Rhodes and doing synth parts and stuff like that. But Jeff came down and played it, and I don't really know the logistics of how that was. Jeff was wonderful to me. He'd been in similar situations. He was a champion for me, even later on, but he came in and he had agreed to play my kit because we were trying to still keep the band sound together. We didn't want the sound to way different. But when he came in, he played. It wasn't appropriate. I mean, and whether that was intentional, I mean, I don't know. I mean, I can run a lot of scenarios. Maybe Jeff wanted to just do something and not have it work, so I would be able to do the track myself. Or maybe he just played what he felt, and what he felt wasn't really right for the song. He played very heavy-handed, and on those little drums, it was choking the tone out of him pretty bad because I didn't play very heavy-handed. I was using maple sticks, so it was really, really light. But what ended up happening was, we listened to what he did, and nobody was really that fond of it. I mean, it was good. Of course, it's Jeff Porcaro. Is it going to be bad? No,
Sure.
the guy never played anything bad in his life. But did it work for the song? And it just didn't. It came back around to me. Okay, so what are you going to do now? So, well, let's try another pass. And I basically abbreviated my part and sort of. It's really if you listen to the demo and you listen to what we came up with, it's just like I just took some of what Jeff had done and made it a little bit more forceful, but not quite as severely heavy-handed as he did, and not quite as fancy. Paying more attention to keeping the hypnotic groove going on that favors Chris's guitar riff, because that's what's really got the song has got that hypnotic thing that you got to meld into. And so if you do too much, you take your attention away from the hypnotic sense of the song.
Yep.
So really, I took those flams from Jeff. That's really what I took. The part was already there. The ba 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 ba, that was already there, but he had played flams there. So I said, well, what if I played the flams on top of what my normal part is? And I did it, and it was like, it's like somebody scored a touchdown. It's like just everybody was just freaking out, and Chris, was very congratulatory and appreciative of me saving the track and everything. And it was a wonderful feeling because we were on the brink of falling apart as a band because of the track, and then all of a sudden we were like we won. It was the team won at the last moment, so it was pretty cool.
That's great. I think I know Robin Flynn's interviewed you for her book on Jeff.
Yes. Yeah.
And I remember reading, and I'd heard the story before, and I think I read where you said, Jeff said something to the effect of like, what Tommy's playing is perfect. Like, I don't know what your problem is. He's
well,
your guy.
Well, I think this was probably during the playback for a song that Jeff actually played on called All Right. I'm not sure. Chris told me the story. So
okay.
I'm only going on what Chris said. But Jeff kind of, in the middle of that, said to Chris, like, hey man, why don't you use Tommy? He's really a great drummer and he's in your band, and Chris basically said, yeah, but he's not Jeff Porcaro. And, and it's like, I get it, I mean, Chris had newfound fame and he'd always loved these players and stuff. And I talked to Chris later about it when we were at a point where we were on pretty open terms. And he just said, man, I got to be real honest with you. It wouldn't have mattered what you played at that point. I wanted to play with the Cats and you weren't them. And it's like, well, it doesn't make me feel any better, but, it's whatever it was. But Jeff was there going like, hey man, you got a great band, I mean, yeah, we can cut this stuff, but is that really what you need to do? So it is what it is,
Yeah. Yep. Well, let's play Sailing. It's I'm so glad we got to talk about this and have you set it up the way you did too, which is great. And there was a question from Doug McKenzie again. Always great questions. And I
Yeah.
did want to mention the drum set, the Sonar kit. He's hard to believe this track was recorded with an 18-inch bass drum and
Yeah,
small
actually,
size toms.
yeah, it was recorded with an 18-inch bass drum with a Sennheiser 421 with the bass rolled off.
No kidding. Wow.
Yeah, it's actually got the bass roll off on the by the jack there, and he rolled the low end off. Chet Himes was our engineer. Chet and I arm wrestled a little bit over drums at first, but once he kind of warmed up to some of my ideas, he really liked the concepts. I had the little drums. This is all taken from Gary. The little toms tuned way below their normal fundamental and mic'd from underneath. Chet was old school. I mean, he wanted a mic from the top, like everybody does. But on a single-headed drum, it's not necessary. And Chet really loved that. I mean, you reverse the phase on the mics because it's a different thing, but also the isolation is incredible because then you can use your overheads primarily to grab the cymbals.
Right,
and you're not getting a lot of cymbal bleed in the tom mics, so you can get your toms to really, really speak well that way. So but there's some other things that Chet did that we can talk about too on that.
Yeah, that makes sense though. Yeah, exactly. All right, so here's Sailing.
Awesome,
beautiful track. Here we go.
Down to paradise, at least it's not for me. And if the wind is right, you can sail away and find tranquility. Oh, the canvas can do miracles. Just you wait and see. Believe me, it's not far to Never Never Land. Reason to pretend, and if the wind is right, you can find the joy of innocence again. Oh, the canvas can do miracles. Just you wait and see. Believe me. Sailing takes me away to where I've always heard it. Every word is a symphony. Won't you believe me? Sailing takes me away to where I've always heard it. Just a dream of the wind to carry me. Soon I will be free. Right, you can sail away and find serenity. Oh, the
Bravo, Tommy. Man,
Oh, thank you, man. Yeah,
masterpiece.
it's an amazing window into time. Yeah.
Yeah, man, I know. And thank you for being so accommodating. You've probably talked about this song a gazillion times over the years, and I appreciate you.
Man, I'm glad to have something to talk about. I mean, it could be a lot worse.
Well, I've always zeroed in on the 16th notes and the hi-hat. That's always been, you play them so clean and smooth and beautifully, and that I think that's that whole thing you were talking about with what makes that song have that, that magic to it.
Yeah. It's a great, that part really, I mean, I will say a lot of that came from Rob Muir, our keyboard player, being a drummer too. And I didn't know. I mean, really, when I walked in there to cut that demo, I had ballads. I didn't have much chops on that. And Rob basically told me, look, this is what I do.
Yeah.
This is how I would approach it. So, you know, you can hear the demo of that. It's there, it's out there too. So you can hear it. But I mean, that he really orchestrated that drum part, the initial thing, and even what Jeff took from that, and then what I brought back from the other side. I mean, Rob should get a lot of credit for that because that was his baby, really. But yeah, the 16th notes is a thing. I mean, it's just it was like, okay, how we got to keep this steady. The thing that I love about it so much is that excuse me. The subtleties that people miss is the kick drum pattern. You've got the heavy 1 and 3, but the little pickups that don't happen the same every time. And then also it's the opening and closing
Mhm.
of the hi-hat, like opening of the
Yes.
hi-hat to go into the fill that starts the chorus, And a lot of people just, they just don't hear it. And they won't, like, if you hear them play it, they won't play that.
I put right here, hi-hat opens to bring in chorus. No,
Yeah,
absolutely.
that's just
Yeah.
that.
Yeah.
It's kind of that's one of the trademarks that's just kind of one of the things that I do. But and also the interesting, so we have more stuff. The tom in the bridge, in the instrumental.
Yeah.
That's I didn't play that. That's
Overdub.
actually Michael
Oh,
Omardian.
oh wow.
He wanted to do that, and he wanted that there. So, but if you have the tracks separate, I'm still just playing the cross stick there. And I said, man, I've got the perfect drum for that. I'll mail it to you guys, and you can overdub it. Rob can overdub it. So Michael ended up playing it. It was a 12-inch round bed Gretsch tom with a Canasonic head on it,
Oh
double
man,
headed.
yeah. It's
So
got such a thud to it. Yeah.
yeah, but it's interesting because they were able to tune it the same, or I did before I sent it. Somehow it's just that's a whole other story we could talk about it some other time. But it's like the tuning is exactly the same note as the other tom. It's
Yeah.
not any
Yeah.
different. So you don't even know that it's not from the same kit. But yeah,
That's cool,
interesting.
Tommy. I had a note to ask you. I assumed it
Yeah,
was you playing it, and I was going to ask you if you overdubbed that or I wasn't sure if it was played, live in the track. I thought you
yeah.
were
No, it
doing some
wasn't.
magic there.
Michael Omardian played it. Michael's kind of a frustrated drummer. I've got pictures of him playing my kit. He's quite a character.
Oh,
He's awesome.
that's great. I got to read a comment from I think a friend of yours goes by the name of Wade's World Music,
Yeah,
and
Wade. Yeah, sure. Wade
Wade.
Johnson.
Okay, Wade. Yeah, okay, Wade. Tommy and I played the same circuit back in the '70s. The moment I heard him, and he was very young, recognized his greatness. I also agree with everything he said about Gary Ogier, and his
Yeah.
drumming with Eric Johnson is great too, and he's a great songwriter. Well, Wade, we're going to talk about those two things in just a minute. Um, the last point, Tommy, I was going to make about that song is, again, just going back to hearing it so many times over the years, is your feel. And it's so interesting to know that you recorded it with a click because it just feels like you're sitting just almost a tad behind the beat. You're
Well,
just so relaxed.
it's so funny because it's like, yeah, I don't know if that's just my inability to be with the click or whether it was just magic or it's just the way I play. It's interesting because I did a version of this recently with a group called the Lexington Lab Band, who are famous on YouTube for their covers. And
Mhm.
I made friends with them. They did one of the best, probably the best, absolutely hands down cover of Raw Like the Wind. And I was so impressed with their drummer because he nailed it 98%, even the sticking, which I'm not normal. I do things a different way. And he's just perfect. It was just, and I was blown away because people send me Ride Like the Wind covers daily almost. It's like, oh, this is terrible. Another terrible Ride Like the Wind cover. And I heard this and I went, okay, you guys, you knocked it out of the park. And we became friendly, you know? And so I actually went out there and played with them. They do one show a year in Kentucky and on Labor Day, and we went out and played Ride Like the Wind. And they even had a guy from Nashville, a great guitar player, Coleman is his last name. He learned Cliffs of Dover, and so we did Ride Like the Wind and Cliffs of Dover back to back live. It was pretty cool. But Vandy, the leader, said, "Hey man, we're going to go in and do a studio version of Sailing. Would you come play it with us?" Well, absolutely. You know, I said, I don't have to rehearse it. I know it note for. I never played it. Once we recorded it, I play it the same way every time. So, you know, he actually he used the original track for the click track that we played to in the new studio version. He said, so here you got, you know, your track speeds up a little bit from the click and here it sets back a little bit from the click. I'm like, man, I don't know. Okay. I don't know, but it's interesting because but we didn't use. I mean, I never used a click track before. It's like, you know, but it was like in that song, it was like we got to have the click. It's got to be steady. It's like, okay, you know, I'll try. You know, I'm just here trying to make a great record. I want to. At that point, I was like, God, I just want to do it or be over. You know, hopefully it'll be okay. But yeah.
I wish I could play that okay.
Oh man, you know, it's okay. Like in retrospect, it's like, I mean, I just look back and say I don't even know that kid, you know, that played those songs. It's like it's amazing to me. I mean, I look at pictures and go, God, I mean, I don't even know how I got there. You know, I mean, it's just amazing to me.
But what a great moment in time, and what a great thing for you to be able to look back at and just, you know, like hear it on the radio probably every day. You know, it's
really strange. It's really fun when you go into the grocery store, you know, and you know, I'm not a kid anymore. You know, you walk up to the cash register to check out your groceries, and it comes on the speaker, you know, and you look at the kid ringing up your groceries. And you hear that record? And the kid goes, yeah, you know, you go, that's me. I played on that. He's like, yeah.
Oh man, I know.
You know, like.
Well, talking about Cliffs of Dover, I was going to jump ahead to your amazing playing with Eric Johnson, and this is why I think this is just so phenomenal that, you know, you made that record with Christopher Cross, and you played those beautiful songs, and then there's this record, and this is from your first. And by the way, I'd be remiss in not saying that Christopher Cross record won, was it 5 Grammys or nominated?
Yeah,
for
five Grammys. 5. Yeah, it won 5.
Yeah, 1-5, man.
It was the record at the time. Nobody had ever done that. Nobody had ever swept the major categories at that point in time. And it stood until Billie Eilish took it a few years back when she did the same major ones at the same time. But yeah, pretty amazing.
Yeah. I do remember, you know, I mean, I was like 20 years old at the time, but I remember it being just a huge, like Grammy Award winning.
It blew our mind. I mean, we were pretty lucky. I mean, our first tour was with Bonnie Raitt when she was still with Warner, and she was on kind of at a low point, you know, because they were still trying to make her a pop singer, a kind of a torch singer, and she was really wanting to be a blues guitar player, and it was pretty cool. And she was great. You know, we're playing colleges and stuff in Florida, and we came back to Austin after that. Was our first tour in a van, and the guys from Beaver Productions in Dallas. I never can remember their names until it's after the fact, but they were great guys, and they called our manager and said, "You guys want to open the Fleetwood Mac Tusk tour?" And it's like, yeah, okay. How much does it pay? It pays $500 a night. And Tim said, "Man, our hotel bill would be $1,500. You know, I mean, we can't do this." He said, "I got guys that'll pay me $1,000 to do the tour. Do you want to do it or not?"
Yeah.
And we went, Warner, hey, we did some tour support over here. Yeah. So we went out and did that, you know. And, you know, I think we were adding ticket sales. I mean, if you were on the fence of whether to see Fleetwood Mac after hearing their new record, because it was quite a departure from Rumors.
Right.
It would be like, I don't know, you know, I like them. But, you know, the fact that we had, you know, about a week and a half into that tour, Ride Like the Wind was just blowing up the charts. It was like, yeah, with that guy, with Christopher Cross, that band on there playing we'll buy the ticket. So, but we did that, and I mean, we played with them all through the spring, and then they went to Europe without us. We got 2.5 weeks with the Eagles in the summer, and then they came back and we did the fall leg of their tour. So visibility really helps. I mean, that really helps to blow up a record, but yeah, it was amazing times. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, really, just incredible. So I'm gonna play. Speaking of, and I think this won a Grammy too. Cliffs of Dover.
Cliffs of Dover did actually. It's the other Grammy in my cap there. Yeah.
Man, and just again, I'll just highlight, not that it needs to be, because once everybody knows this song anyway, of course, but your versatility, I think it just comes shining through when we hear you playing on this song. Really, really fantastic. So here comes Cliffs of Dover, Eric Johnson. Tommy Taylor on drums. Man, that's some just electrifying drumming.
Thanks. Yeah, it's great. I listen back to that now. A lot of things have come to mind. Remember, it's like I remember the intro. There's that press roll where
Yeah.
it's like for this kind of the circus thing. And it's really great when you don't have a producer or a record company involved telling you what you can and can't do. Actually,
Yeah. Yeah.
that's a snare drum quartet. I actually used 4 snare drums, overdubbed 4 tracks for that.
No
It's a
kidding.
it's an 8x15 Ludwig it's a school
Coliseum, is that what it's
festival
called?
model. And then
Okay.
there's
Yep.
my regular the Hitmaker, the 402 that I use on the Christopher Cross record, and then there's a 30s Ludwig Pioneer 5x14 and a 3x13 Duco Ludwig piccolo snare drum. So it's 4 drums played together.
Wow. Wow. And compression and sounds like a lot of reverb
Man,
too.
a lot of that stuff that's the remix engineer on that's Michael Frondelli is quite famous. He's a great guy, and John Frondelli, his brother, is pretty visible. You probably know John. But Michael did a lot of processing and stuff on the drums on that record, and it's the thing of the day was to use a lot of gates and reverb and things like
Yeah.
that. So actually on the fill that goes into the verse section, you're missing a lot of grace notes that I actually played there because you're really hearing the hard hits of the snare and not necessarily all the stuff that comes in between because it's kind of gated out a little bit, but it's cool.
Yeah. It was like you say, it was the time, that was
yeah.
that was, yeah.
That was the sound. I have to, break in here and give a little because I mean it's a wonderful part. And I don't want to, the feel is mine, the way I play is mine. A lot of the fills are mine, but that's a pretty complex part for an instrumental song. And I, really, I want to give some credit to the guy who actually came up with that. Eric's drummer previous to me was a guy named Steve Metter. Was an incredibly great player. If you ever want to go and watch some of Carole King's 1-to-1, they did some live tracks there that Eric plays on. Steve is the drummer on those records that with Carole King, Pearls and
Okay.
1-to-1 and Touch the Sky that was produced by my co-producer Mark Hallman. But Steve came up with a lot of those parts. He and Eric kind of orchestrated those parts together. So I basically came in and I was, jumping into the band feet first. And it's like, I just learned Steve parts. So, I mean, I wasn't given that track cold and said, come up with something to play. I was actually playing what Steve had played. So credit where credit's due. Steve really wrote a lot of that part,
That's great. Yeah. Well, you played it really faithfully and executed it like, it's
well, I
not
made it
easy
my
to
own,
play.
but it's like it was already there. I didn't just come up with all of that like pulling out of the sky. Like on later tunes I did, but on some of those songs that were already written.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I want to just jump ahead for a second and
Sure.
And I appreciate you giving so much time today, Tommy. I really do.
Oh,
I know
man.
we started a little bit late, but I want to just talk about for a minute, and I'm going to have you back on just so everybody watching this
cool.
knows this. Yeah, we're gonna do another episode down the road, a track talk, and talk about Tommy's solo record, Across the Stars. Yeah, which I knew about this and you hit me to it recently and I gave it a listen and I'm like, man, this record is so great. And you wrote it, you produced it, you sing, you play pretty much all the instruments, I think, right? Most of them anyway.
Well, I played some acoustic guitar, some electric guitar. I played the drums, all the percussion, did the vocals, the backing vocals, a lot of them, and I arranged it and produced it. I have a co-producer, Mark Hallman, I always wanted to work with Mark since I met him when he was brought to town to work with Carole King, and I just love Mark's production. I've done a lot of work with Mark. Mark's had me play on a lot of people's records that he produced, and Mark's just a great man. I mean, he can play any instrument. He's a great drummer. He'll work with me. Like we'll go back and listen to mixes. We're starting to really get down to the brass tacks, and it's my record, so I can make the drums do whatever I want. So we'll listen to everything, and I want to make sure that, like a lot of times, if the drums aren't really the focus, and you're playing on somebody else's record, the drums get kind of a faders up treatment, and they are what they are, and you're kind of you kind of fare however you fare. It's like I'm telling a story on the drums, and if you don't hear all of the consonants in the words, you're going to miss the sentences. They're not going to make sense. And so he's very accommodating in that he'll actually go back with me because he's a drummer. He'll go like, "Oh, I see what you were saying now. Yes, it makes sense to bring that tom hit up in that fill, because sometimes they're not recorded exactly like you mean them. So it's just great. And like I said, he's just, if I'm going to do something, because I'm a little bit of a wild hair, I might go off on a tangent and Mark will go like, yeah, don't do that. And it's like, oh, right. I mean, I defer to him because he'll keep me from making any really stupid mistakes. I mean, I'm pretty good, but I might go a little outside and he'll go like, yeah, that's probably not a good idea. So it's a wonderful experience.
Well, I got to think, it's the discipline in making this record because, I think what's so great about it, and we're gonna play one track as a little teaser, for everybody to get a little taste of it, and then we're gonna do a separate show and really kind of go through it and dig in. But
cool.
when you hit me to it and I started listening to it, and what's great about it is it's such a great. Just the songs are all beautiful. It's not, I mean, you definitely get to play. Yeah. But you're a great singer and the songs are melodic and just well written and it sounds great.
I had a pretty high bar, I mean, I was a miserable songwriter. I tried and but I played with so many great writers. It's like, man, I'm not, if I can't be at that level, then I'm not going to do this. I'm not going to put out crummy songs. If I can't be great, then I'd rather just not embarrass myself. And then, I got frustrated listening to a lot of current music and I just said, man, I can write better songs than that, so I just kind of put my nose to the grindstone and I found that I was doing pretty good and I played it for other people. I go, wow, that's really good. I went, it is? Are you sure? Because I mean, I don't shine me on because I don't want to make a big mistake. Everybody says you look great, and and then you go out and you look, like a really bad movie. So, but I'm very pleased with the songs. I mean, I like the songs. I mean, like once again, the drumming is. It's not. I'm not Dave Weckl here. I'm just supporting the song. I'm not playing. Yeah. It's not a showcase, not a drummer record. So but the songs were things I felt needed to be said. I mean, I know we're talking about Ghost Town coming up here. That's a song I wrote about the music business, man. It's a metaphor for the music business. It's L.A. It's a ghost town out there. It's not what it was, and people can. They can pretend all they want to, but it's not the same now that we don't have record companies and people buying hard copy of music. So,
yeah, I get it. Well, I'm going to play the song "Ghost Town." It's the first song from the record "Across the Stars," and I just got to say, everybody watching, buy this record. Really, I mean, it's such a beautiful collection of songs, and then we'll come back in a few weeks and. I'm giving everybody their homework assignment. Basically, listen to these songs awesome. and then join us again in a few weeks, and we'll play them and hear Tommy talk about them. But here comes Ghost Town, and this came out in 2023. Tommy, is that correct?
2023. Yeah, I held it for a long time. We had COVID came in to play and everything. I just was like, man, I was kind of pushed to release it. I really wanted to try and figure out a way to do it with more fanfare, but it's just so hard to be an independent, and I mean, I'm at the point I released it, I'm 66 years old and, it's like record companies aren't really that interested in talking. I thought they might be, cause it's a pretty cool story. I mean, I came from, all of this other past with nothing except my laurels of my drums, but I got a lot of really incredible people to play on this record, and they didn't do it because it wasn't any good just because they were my friends. They did it because they thought it was a great project. And I thought, their names are bigger than mine. And I thought, well, that should get some sort of buzz going. It's like, man, it's not easy. It's really not. No. But I mean, I'm very lucky to have had the people I've got, Mark Andys from Heart and Firefall, Roscoe Beck, who is Leonard Cohen's musical director Michael Omardian, who played with everybody, Steely Dan, on and on, did orchestrations. I mean, it's a pretty amazing set of people to play on.
Yeah.
I'm
It,
really lucky.
and it sounds like it. I mean, it sounds like a record that was made with I can't explain it any other way other than just like really great musicians, great quality recording, like,
Well, I mean, really, yeah, I had to do that, with no money, no money. There is no budget, I mean, and that just was facilitated during the times. I mean, it's really, I mean, it's not, we didn't go into the studio and cut it. I mean, it's definitely layered. But the cool thing is that everybody that worked on the record knows what records that are made when you go in and play together sound like. So they know how to play to make it sound like it's ensemble. It doesn't sound pieced together. It sounds like we cut it, which is awesome. I mean, I'm just really, really lucky. Great opportunity to have these guys play with me.
Well, let's give it a listen. Here it comes.
Cool.
Ghost Town. Yeah, Ghost Town.
Ghost Town. It's a ghost town. See through the walls, down the empty halls of the ghost town. Ghost town, crumbling now. It's a ghost town. Come to terms with heartbreak. Behind we always knew a fleeting dream and sadness drops beyond the view. That music might change the world. She marched to her own tune. Still life the best it shimmered in each passing of the moon. Ghost town, crumbling now. It's a ghost town. Beyond the glory days, the once good soldiers linger in disarray and dismay. Still coax a trigger finger. No news that war was over, no shame and no defeat. They stand in crushing silence, with swagger they still meet. In the ghost town, crumbling round you, it's a ghost town. History gives the reasons, all up for debate. You raise your voice in protest as young fish take the bait. Well, Icarus dreamed of flying, the wax that sealed his fate. The old wax spins so sweetly as we share the empty plate. In the ghost town, yeah, yeah, it's a ghost town. Down the empty halls of the ghost town. Ghost town, crumbling now.
Wow. Beautiful track,
Cool,
man. Great. Yeah.
Those are actually the toms from the Christopher Cross kit that I played on that. I actually dug those out to play them.
Wow, no kidding. And they're small, so they're small, like.
Yeah, no, it's the 810 the 810-12 on the rack toms. I use those original Christopher Cross drums, and actually, those are actually the very microphones that were used on the Christopher Cross record. Because Mark Hallman owns those mics. He bought them from Chet. I tried to, it was fun to do. Yeah, it's cool.
I'm so honored to have you here today with me, Tommy. And I so
No,
appreciate you taking the time to do this.
love it, man. I'm totally jazzed to be here, man. It's just awesome. Thank you so much for having me.
My pleasure. And we're gonna do this again soon. I'm gonna have you back, and we're gonna do a track talk on Across the Stars, the whole record. And a big hand for my hero and my friend Tommy Taylor. And buy the record so when we do the track talk in a couple of weeks, you'll know it inside and out.
Yeah, you can get it. You can get it on my website, TommyTaylor.com, or you can find it on Apple Music or Amazon or anywhere you get stuff. You can get it there.
Great. I'll put all the links in the show notes for it. Yeah.
Okay, cool.
Great.
Awesome.
All right. Hang with me if you would, Tommy, just for a second. We'll end the stream, say goodbye. Thanks, everybody.
Awesome.
Thanks for watching. We'll see you soon. All right. That's my show. If you enjoyed it, give it a like, leave me a comment, and please subscribe to my YouTube channel. You can also download the podcast on all podcast platforms. And I'm excited to tell you that Live from My Drum Room has been ranked #1 best drum podcast for the second straight year. So thank you all for your support. I really appreciate it. And I want to invite you to check out livefrommydrumroom.com, my website, for upcoming shows and also for information on ordering Live from My Drum Room merchandise, t-shirts and hoodies. 100% of the proceeds go toward a scholarship I've created with the Percussive Arts Society. There's also information on ordering merchandise in the show notes. And you can email or text me at livefrommydrumroom@gmail.com. So remember, no drummers are harmed on any show. And drummers, when in doubt, leave it out. Thanks for watching. Thanks for listening. And I'll see you again real soon.